It's time for Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt. Todd Marquardt, attorney at law in Texas. If you're a millionaire or a thousandaire, Talk Law Radio is now on the air. Call in with your business law question, your elder law question, veteran aid, Medicaid, build a business to get paid. 210-308-8867. Or ask a question online at marquardtlawfirm.com. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com. And now it's Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Also on podcasts everywhere. You can view previous episodes on YouTube. So go to YouTube, just search for Talk Law Radio and look for my smiling face. Then you can click subscribe, then click the little bell so that you get notified whenever a new video is posted. You can also go to www.talklawradio.com and search previous episodes there. Of course, we also have this recorded on podcast, so you can search for the podcast however you listen to podcasts. So today we're going to be talking about mediation, but first, because we're going to be talking about the law, I'm going to talk about our disclaimer. The State Bar of Texas is the state agency that governs attorney law licenses, and the State Bar wants attorneys to inform the public about the law. But because legal advice must be tailored to the specific circumstances of each case, and because laws are ever-changing, the material discussed today should be meant for general informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information you learn today should be coordinated with individual professional advice. Marquardt Law Firm is sponsoring our show today, and Marquardt Law Firm focuses on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans. Also, new businesses and old businesses might have issues with corporations, contracts, LLCs, and family-limited partnerships. We can represent those who are facing problems from lack of planning, like in county court, district court, or probate court. Before we get started talking about the law, let's begin with prayer. Dear God, thank you for this day and for all the gifts and blessings that you give to us. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to talk about the law on the radio. Please forgive us for our sins, for our mistakes, for doing the wrong thing, or failing to do your will. Please help Toni O'Brien and me give good information about mediation today. Help us to use the gifts and talents you have provided for the good of your people, for our own good, and for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Now it's time to discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. Today we have Toni O'Brien, certified mediator, and she's going to be talking about mediation. So if you have questions about mediation, please post a comment in the Facebook live feed or email me at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOST@talklawradio.com, and we'll try and get you an answer. I've known Toni for many years. She's worked in various parts of the law, which we'll ask her about. But today she's focusing on mediation. So, Toni, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's give our audience some background about how you got to where you are today. Tell us, how did you get to San Antonio?
Well, it was a trip. I was born and raised in Wyoming. And then I lived in Colorado for a while. And then my parents had moved up to Alaska, so I followed them eventually up in 1986. And then through a series of God things, I ended up in a title company and ended up managing one and then becoming a part owner. And so I was in that for probably 10 years. Then I took a mission trip to Bulgaria for 2 years, came back, started the title company back up in Juneau, and then they offered me another one in the San Juan Islands in Washington State, so who could refuse?
Wow.
Yeah. So I went down and opened that up and integrated escrow services into it because it was strictly title when I took it over. And then in 2008, I thought, okay, I'm done with this. I want to go ahead and do something different. And the day I got notice of who they were going to replace me with, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer.
Oh.
Yeah, so I went ahead and retired, and that was in May, and I took care of her till she passed in August. Then my dad...
And where was that, Washington
That was
State?
in Washington. Cedro-Woolley is where they were. I'd moved off island and moved onto the mainland in Cedro-Woolley. And then my dad did not want to spend another winter in the north. So sight unseen, at 89, my dad said, I'll move with you wherever you go. So I was able to, I thought Dad was not going to last very long after my mom died. They'd been married 64 years. They had 10 children. So I thought it wouldn't take long. So we moved down here because the goal for me was to go back into the mission field. And my dad stuck it out for another 9 years, and I had to go to work. So I ended up at the Spahn Law Firm. I didn't want to go back into title insurance. I ended up with Matt and worked with him. And then I worked with Charlie Weisinger. And then I am now with Carol Birch. I'm working part-time for her doing her bookkeeping. But in that series of events, I saw that there's so much division inside families. And I really, it was disconcerting to see that every time something rocked a boat, someone in the family got mad. I was fortunate in my family because I have 9 brothers and sisters that didn't happen. There wasn't much left for starters, but also, we just knew, it was just fine. But most families, probably 85%, have division when someone dies or when someone gets sick. So that's,
or they might already be divided, right?
Correct. Yeah. And sometimes, during my time with Carol, I saw so much of the division was caused by misinformation, miscommunications. I know it comes as a massive surprise, but Google does not know everything. And so there was a lot of just wrong information being passed around, and then people would dig their heels in and take a position, and there was no budging them from that. And so about 3 years in with Carol, we decided to go ahead and start the mediation. And so I got certified and did both the basic and the family law certification. And then it didn't really work with Carol as well, because by the time people called the law office, it was past the point of they wanted to litigate. So we decided to separate out that portion, and I would stay doing part work with her, but do the mediation on my own. So that's how it came about.
Yeah, having that many people in the same household, you would think there would be a problem.
You would think, but I have a pretty amazing family. My mom and dad did good by us. They taught us to be independent, but, we don't call each other all the time. We don't stay in touch all the time, but we have each other's back all the time.
What were some unifying core values for the family?
I think really probably what held us so close was because there were 10 of us, Mom and Dad were kind of like not who took care of us.
My granddad said the same thing, that his sister was the one that raised him because there was about 17 years difference.
Yeah, there's 10 years difference between me and my oldest and me and the youngest.
Oh.
I'm right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the peacemaker.
I am. I am. Hence mediation.
Okay, so we know lots about your family now. Tell us a little bit about some of the work that you did. Aside from the legal work that you did, you also were a manager and a leader in some of these workplaces, right?
I was. I did the general operations for Carol. So I managed her firm, and we just finished building this big building to house the new attorneys and the new staff to support them. That was my project pretty much. I mean, Carol, of course, had oversight over everything, but a lot of the getting the vendors on board and getting things set up, a lot of that was my job. And so that was exhausting. It was a 2-year project. But yeah, in most of my jobs, of course, I was manager and co-owner in the title insurance businesses. And apart from that, in my other real life, I've been a minister since I think I was ordained in 1994. So that also is part of where I've taken a lead in a lot of ways.
So did you do that full time or was that part time?
The ministry?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be part time. Yeah. I did. I had the women's group, the children's group, the worship. Kept the computer updated, and so probably. And I preached 2 or 3 times a week, so it was part time. I've never been a full time minister because I've always had to work.
But it took a lot of time.
It took a lot of time. Yeah.
Like having 2 full-time jobs.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, well worth it. Yeah. Well worth it. Yeah.
And so what do you attribute your strong desire to be in the ministry like that?
So that would require a testimony, and I'll just give a short one. But I was a hot mess when I was young, and when God got my attention, it was a Paul thing. It was like one day I was this way, and the next day I was way different. And I just really wanted to see that same experience happen to other people. It really drives me to the idea that someone makes a choice not to follow the Lord. Just it boggles my mind. I do not understand it. And worse is that they don't always understand the eternal aspect of that choice. And so I want them to know they have to choose.
Amen.
Yeah.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about mediation.
New to San Antonio? If you move from out of state, your estate plan may not be aligned with Texas laws. Did you know 41 states treat property ownership differently than Texas? Protect your assets and loved ones. As a newcomer to Texas, it's essential to review your estate plan with an experienced attorney. Marquardt Law Firm is here to help. Chat with us online at marquardtlawfirm.com to schedule a consultation. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, and we're here to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. We're on 9:30 a.m. The Answer podcasts, and later we'll be on talklawradio.com, also on YouTube, and you can subscribe to that channel and get notifications when a new video is posted. You can also find us on Facebook Live. Today we're talking about mediation with Toni O'Brien, who is a certified mediator. Her business is called Restoration Mediation in San Antonio, Texas. Toni mediates with families who are in distress due to illness or death. You can learn more about Toni O'Brien and Restoration Mediation by emailing her at toni@restorationmediation.com. Toni, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
We talked about your background and your work history, a little bit about your faith. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Now I want to talk about the business. So you had to get certified. Just for listeners that don't know what process that is. What did you have to do to get certified?
So you have to train with someone who meets the requirements to train, and it's usually a face-to-face. It's in person, but I started right before COVID.
Okay.
So kind of made a mess of things. So we ended up doing it all online. My teacher actually was in Germany, so it worked out well for her because she usually came and did
wow.
So it worked out well for her. But it's a 6-week, I think, course for the basics, and it's a lot of reading. But most of the time you spend with the class is doing actual mediations, so she can kind of give you feedback.
Practicing.
Practicing. Yeah. So that was a little intimidating because I'm great at doing a lot of book work. I wasn't expecting to do so many mediations and then have the whole class kind of give you feedback. Mm-hmm. That was a little disconcerting. But it worked out really well and was good. It helped me to really figure out how I want it to move. A lot of people, do the full mediation, but I've really narrowed down what I want to work with. Yeah. Yeah.
And you wanted to narrow it down to elder law taught clients.
Pretty much. I took the second course on divorce, family relations, and then domestic abuse because I just really felt like it's you never can know too much. But going through that, I realized I really don't want to get into the middle of custody battles. It's heartbreaking, and it's a lot of emotional stress. And so, and having watched for 5 years, the devastation on the elderly and on their family of when they get sick and they have, they don't know what to do with their money and they start fighting with each other. And often the elderly parent is silent during the fighting between the kids because they don't want to take sides, but it diminishes their health. You can watch them deteriorate as the fight goes on. And so I thought, I really want to help families figure out resolutions.
Yeah, I see those too. But it reminds me of a continuing education seminar I went to. There was a probate litigator talking about litigation and how estate planning attorneys can do things to help prevent litigation. And he said he was talking to a friend who did divorce and child custody, and he was telling the guy, "You have it so easy. Your client probably hated his spouse for, 10, 20 years. My client has hated his brother for 40, 50 years. Yes. He had a client who told his brother, 'You made your bed when you were 4.' And he was like, 'Really? Not just children, but almost babies, and you're holding a grudge for that since then?' So you've probably seen that type of attitude.
I do, and it always amazes me. First, my question is, well, if you're already mad, how are we going to come to any kind of resolution? Because mediation is, everybody has to come to the table willing to make some kind of an agreement, understanding that they're not going to get everything they want. They often think that's the rule, but that I'm neutral, so I can't really guide them one way or the other. But they have to be willing to compromise. And when you already have this hate fest thing going on, it's hard to figure out where you're going to compromise. So often I will just have them take a step back and figure out, okay, are you willing to communicate with this person you've been feuding with for however many years to do the greater good and find a resolution to this problem? Probably 7 out of 10 say yeah. Some just want to be mad, and they're not ever going to want to stop.
Well, I was going to ask you about your strategies, and that sounds like one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just make them take a step back because, I think lots of times people think mediation is about me as the mediator, taken their side and kind of beaten up the other side until they come to their senses. And it's really not that. It's really being neutral, but, helping guide them to some realistic ideas, that you may want the entire thing, but you're only really going to come here. What's your bottom line resolution? What's the thing that you won't give up?
Well, it's easy to do that with money, if the dispute is about money. But what if it's about something else, like power, control, or something like that?
One of the questions that I have asked most recently in a situation where one of the siblings wanted to be power of attorney. So one of the questions I ask is, so when was the last time you had an overdraft charge? And how often does it happen? And then I explain to them that their duty is much greater to the person they're being an agent for than it is to their own bank account. And if they can't control their own bank account, they might not want to take on the obligation and the liability of controlling someone else's.
Yeah.
So if you approach it as, I'm really trying to protect you, often they'll hear you, and then so I've had to have that conversation. And the same thing with medical, you don't want somebody in that's going to be cowed by the medical profession because they can be intimidating.
I hear you. No, I tell people that all the time, that you want somebody who will confront physicians and nurses and go find them, when they're not showing up.
Right, and advocate. Not every surgery is necessary, not every medication is necessary, and so figure, who is going to be able to stand up. And then once we kind of get that worked out, then we, I would guess probably the first 20 minutes is them kind of airing their anger, a lot of venting. There's rules in place. They can't swear. They can't get violent. They can't, yell. But there's probably that time when they vent. And then once we get past that, we can really make things work.
Okay. Yeah, those are some good strategies. How do people come to know about your service?
I have, I've been so blessed in this community. I've known a lot of attorneys, and I also work, I don't know if you know Esther Pipoli. She works with Loss of Life Advocates.
Yeah, I've heard of her, yeah.
Yeah. So she and she actually feeds a fair amount of business to me, but I also do advocacy for her. So if we have a family that is dealing with death or loss of any kind, job or whatever, there may be some things that we can do, help get a hold of their employers if they're needing workers' comp or disability, and help get them on the programs that they need. So I work a lot with her doing advocacy, but then when it gets past the advocacy point, then I go into the mediation.
Okay. Do you see any common characteristics of families that need some help resolving disputes?
I think misinformation is the common thing. They take a position and communicate this idea, and it's wrong. It's just wrong information.
Yeah.
For example, there's so much misinformation about Medicaid and what it will and what it won't do, how it works and how it won't work, and because they read it on the internet. And so you have to clarify a lot of the misinformation. Then once you narrow that down and they realize what they're dealing with, it helps them move past, what they thought they knew and figure out what's real.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So I wanted to mention to the listeners, let me take a break from mediation just for a second and talk about No Shave November, the fact that I'm growing a beard that isn't fully grown yet. I'm doing it for men's health. So I told my wife that it wasn't going to be for forever, but I definitely wanted to grow out my goatee again. I didn't like it when my chin was without its fur, so I'm going to work on that. So if you want to bring awareness to men's health, check out my Movember link on Facebook. Okay, so we've got to take another break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about mediation, some case studies, types of disputes, how to come to a resolution when a family member is digging in. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt on 930 AM The Answer. Podcasts, Facebook Live, and YouTube. We're talking with Toni O'Brien about mediation today. She's a certified mediator with her business called, what's it called?
Restoration Mediation.
It just rolls right off the tongue. The definition of mediation is in Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code, section 154.023, which says mediation is a forum in which an impartial person, the mediator, facilitates communication between parties to promote reconciliation, settlement, or understanding among them. So let's get into some of the technical components of mediation and why those things are important. How about starting with confidentiality?
So that's an important factor, particularly when you're dealing with families, because they don't want all of their stuff out there. So I reiterate, it's in the engagement agreement, it's in the settlement agreement, it's in everything that they read, and then we discuss it at the very beginning that this is all confidential and that it can't be subpoenaed by a judge. So whatever they say, it's a safe place to say it. Mm-hmm. Of course, again, we have to put in rules, otherwise, we'd have fisticuffs sometimes. So we don't want that. But we do say, whatever you say, this isn't going to go anywhere. So, that helps them. I think it helps them feel safe. It unlike being in a courtroom or in any other litigation situation where they have to give testimony in front of a judge and a jury.
Mm-hmm. They're going to be so careful in picking the right words.
Exactly. So this is a place where they don't have to pick the words. They just need to say what they need to say so we can get past the roadblock.
Yeah. And so the law says it's confidential, and that would also be a philosophy of every mediator. So what else is important?
It's important to know that, to remind them that I don't have a side and I don't have any skin in the game. My goal is to help restore communication, unity. My tagline is restoring unity and dismantling division. So I want to be able to repair what's been broken, but I can't give them direction. I can give them ideas, or I can say, that's not correct, or things like that, but they really have to come to the agreement themselves. And the reason mediation works is because they did come to the agreement themselves. They have invested some thought and some time and maybe some compromises into the agreement. If I tell them what to do, then they have to do it. But if they decide what to do, then they get to do it. It's a whole different perspective. So that's, I think, why it's so effective. It's because it's really them coming to an agreement, and it's signed. At the end of it, when everything is settled and everybody has decided what they want to do, what they're willing to compromise on, or where they're willing to go, it's signed. It's a signed agreement, and it's not like with court-ordered mediation, it's often then integrated into the order. But in my mediation, it isn't, but it is enforceable. So if someone breaches or decides not to do what they agreed to do, they can be taken to court and it can be enforced.
Okay. And have you ever had or met with somebody who later decided, I don't want to do that?
Yes, actually I have. And it was an interesting situation. It was an older woman who just could not wrap her head around the idea that she maybe couldn't keep doing all the things that she'd been doing her whole life. And the mediation was with her family and her to kind of get her to an understanding that she needed more help and that she couldn't, run this massive ranch. And so she kind of backed down after a couple of months. And so all it took, though, was a letter just saying and reminding her and sending her the contract and saying, you agreed to this. And so you're obligated to follow through. And she was fine. It was just, people they don't love change. It's not
right.
It's not their favorite thing. And so anytime, and they don't like being, held their feet to the fire. But this is, better this than continuing to be in complete, disarray in the family.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. I like to keep families together as well. I tell my clients that I want to help them reduce family conflict with their planning.
Yeah, I think that's a goal that we really need to be mindful of. One of the things that I've seen over the years is that oftentimes when people are putting estate plans together, they think, okay, well, I have to name all my kids as my agents, and and sometimes your kids are absolutely not the best person to be your agent, and that creates tension. Because there's, jealousy among the kids, or they want to have everybody be everything.
Yeah,
that doesn't work either. So you have to, the upfront part is trying to create anything that just diminishes any opportunity for discord. But unfortunately, I've noticed over the years, people just sort of like to fight. They just enjoy the process, and chaos seems to be the order of the day. And so,
well, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your siblings or your parents.
True. And there's personality differences, and there's a couple of my siblings that probably, if I met them in another setting, we probably wouldn't be particularly close. But they're my family, so
right.
It makes a difference. Yeah.
Well, I heard a study talked about on the radio one time about how confusing it was that the children could be raised by the same parents and turn out different, could do different things, be interested in different things. And this social scientist said, well, that there's a fallacy in that thinking. The children didn't have the same parents because the parents changed also through the years, through their experience with each child and having a different personality, and the parents are also trying to adapt, to the family. And so you said there was like 20 years difference between the first and the last for you, right?
Right.
Well, those are going to be two totally different people at the end of 20 years.
They were. My sister and I were just talking about that. She was just down here from Juneau, and she's 5 years younger, and she is the second to last. And she was saying about how spoiled she was in comparison to the rest of us. And it was true. Mom and Dad were tired by the time they got to number 9. And so, there was a lot more freedom. She had a whole different curfew. Until the day I was married, my curfew was 11:30, but hers was not. And so, they were different people because, we do not stay the same. And sometimes kids put their parents in a box, and they're always that parent that they were in high school.
Right.
And so whatever angst or disagreement or thing they had against them at that point, they hang on to that person. But the parent has changed, and they're not the same person. And kids, I think, more than the parents, but I think kids have a hard time recognizing that their parents are changed.
Well, this is why I really like to talk about the gospel, because of the grace that God showed us by forgiving us even when we didn't deserve it. It's a model for us to try and follow with our family members is to give them some grace and forgive them even if they don't deserve it.
And yeah, forgive, doesn't always mean forget, but what I've noticed in my own life is forgiveness allows me, so if the remembrance comes, it doesn't hurt so much. It's not a big deal, and you get past the difficulty, and you are able to forgive. Unforgiveness really holds you hostage. The other person doesn't even sometimes know that you're mad at them, and so it's only holding you hostage. And so forgiveness is freedom, and that's why it's so important with the families to get past those disputes and past those angry thoughts against each other, because at the end of the day, when your mom and dad die, you only have your siblings. And so there needs to be that, you need to hold each other up through the grieving process.
Yeah. What I used to tell the kids when they were babies is, hey, the sibling is maybe the only person that can give you a kidney. Mine might not work, but you guys, you have more similar genetic traits. And so, you want to be nice to him so that he might give you his kidney.
Just in case you need something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
But can you describe the feeling from your perspective when you see a disgruntled family member finally come together and hug each other at the end?
It's such an amazing feeling, and I truly feel humbled, because I know that, lots of things were happening in the background that didn't have anything to do with me. I know that whatever outcome, God's in the middle of it. I pray before I mediate. I pray about the people I'm mediating with, because I really, really want what's best for them. And so when it does work, I just know that, that there was a hand in it that really brought this family together. And to see people hug who haven't even talked to each other in years, it's extraordinary.
That's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to take another break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about mediation with Toni O'Brien, and we'll talk about legacy. Stay tuned.
New to San Antonio? If you move from out of state, your estate plan may not be aligned with Texas laws. Did you know 41 states treat property ownership differently than Texas? Protect your assets and loved ones. As a newcomer to Texas, it's essential to review your estate plan with an experienced attorney. Marquardt Law Firm is here to help. Chat with us online at marquardtlawfirm.com to schedule a consultation. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Also podcasts, Facebook Live, YouTube, and of course you can go to talklawradio.com and search for previous episodes to learn about guardianship, probate, estate planning, wills, power of attorney, and much, much more. But today we're talking about mediation with Toni O'Brien with Restoration Mediation, and we've been talking about families that are in dispute because of illness or death.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the types of disputes that I've seen or heard of, and you can just weigh in on how maybe that situation could be addressed. Sometimes a person will seek out guardianship service because they think that their loved one is not making good decisions. And so we always have to begin with, well, is that person incapacitated? Because you have the right to make bad decisions if you want to, just so long as you have the mental capacity to make that analysis in your own mind. And so I've been involved in guardianships when that was the biggest question: is this person incapacitated? If there were a mediation situation, how could that be addressed?
Well, a lot of weight, even in the mediation, is going to be given to the physician statement, what they're saying. Our office was once involved in a guardianship where there was a dispute as to whether or not the ward had capacity, the potential ward had capacity. And ultimately, the conclusion was made that maybe for some things, but not for everything. And so I think that would be, that's the better approach, is to say, if the physician statement says, yeah, there's some issues, then use that as the base. But, you're right. If we're, and I've said this more than once, she can make whatever decision she wants. It's her stuff. It's her thing. Because she's making bad decisions doesn't mean that she lacks capacity. It may be just some common sense issues. But you can't mediate common sense.
Yeah.
Even.
Some of the behaviors that I've heard people complain about are gambling. When those people are going to need money to pay for care and medical service. Or, let's see, I was thinking about something, but then it slipped my mind. So you mentioned the physician statement. Just for the listeners that don't know what we're talking about there, the Estates Code requires a special form be filled out by a physician that has questions about what medical issue or health concern is causing this person to make decisions that a healthy person might not otherwise make. So that form is somewhat public. You can get it from the courthouse. And so I give it to everybody. Say, you let me know what you find out, and then we'll take the next step from there.
Right.
But it seems to me that this would be a situation where maybe there's not enough communication between the family, and so you need to talk about, well, what is it exactly that you're concerned about? Is health deteriorating? Oh, that's what I was going to mention. Some people choose not to go to the doctor.
Right.
And that's allowed. You can decide that for yourself, just so long as there's not something prohibiting you from making decisions.
Another really common issue is when a spouse, they've been a long marriage and a spouse has died, then the surviving spouse finds a companion. That is one of the most common things. And then the kids are all crazy about, this person is taking advantage, and, we need to get him under guardianship so we can get her out of there, or get a divorce if he's married or she is married. And again, if they have capacity, they can do what they want. You can't really, you can't tell them what to do, even though they're older. And if they want to be in a vulnerable situation, you have to. The best thing to do, at least for me, and I've only been in one of the situations, was to sit the whole family down and let them address the concerns. We never really mediated or came to a settlement agreement, but everybody sat in the same room.
Family meeting.
Yes, a family meeting. And I think in this case, the surviving spouse was surprised that the kids were feeling this way because they hadn't communicated that to him. And so I think that really is something I can be helpful with, although it's not true mediation.
Well, love makes people do strange things sometimes.
It does.
Whether you're old or not.
And just because you hit 60 doesn't mean you're not capable of loving or having a relationship with people. And I think sometimes our kids forget that, when my dad died or when my mom died, they'd been married 64 years. And When we moved down here, there was a woman at the assisted living that he enjoyed her company, and I was fully supportive of that because he'd been married 64 years. He missed the company of a woman, and so I was. But not all my siblings were excited about the concept. Yeah.
Well, you know what the chances are of a happily married man getting remarried after losing his wife are?
No.
About 90%.
Really?
Because of what you said, happily married men, they miss that. They enjoyed being taken care of. The opposite isn't usually true of women, though. What are the chances of a happily married woman getting remarried after losing a spouse?
No.
Not so high.
I'm sure. We're like,
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, we're free. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about a different situation.
Okay.
Who should be in control? You mentioned a few minutes ago somebody who maybe wanted to be power of attorney over the finances, but it could be somebody who just wants control over everything, making medical, healthcare, and financial decisions.
Well, that is the most, probably one of the most common things is durable power of attorneys. They really are the thing that families seem to struggle with the most. Who should be in control? Well, the
oldest,
person,
right?
Yeah,
the oldest child.
No, the person that actually is giving
right.
up the agency. So that's the person that really should be in control. But when they lose the ability to make good decisions, you need, even though someone is named as the person. In a family situation, it's really important to be transparent. Let all the siblings know. I mean, you can't let them know every decision because they're happening pretty quickly.
But you can let them see the bank statements.
Share the bank statements. Share, the big decisions. Don't make them on your own. Get the whole family involved. Make them feel like they're a part of the decision making. When you do that, when you really are transparent and you're sharing information and you're not like lording it over them that you're the power of attorney and their opinion doesn't matter, it moves in a whole different direction. And so when we have those conversations, when I have those kinds of family meetings and we end up mediating, that is the first thing, is that let's make a schedule of when and what kind of information you need to share. And then they all, can agree to it. Most of the time, there's a fair amount of tweaking that has to be done, but that's the biggest issue is making sure that everybody knows what's going on, so they don't feel like you're just making decisions.
Yeah, those are some good tips. We're nearing the end of the show, and so we have to talk about legacy.
And now it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
I wasn't sure how that was going to come out because I haven't done a recorded episode in a long time. Maybe since Mark invented that little segment there. So let's talk about how you want to be remembered or something that you learned, a legacy from those who went before you.
Well, there's a song that Stephanie Gretzinger sings, and it says that I want my children and my children's children to know that I loved the Lord and that I served him with everything I had during the course of my life. And that's how I want to be remembered, as a servant, and that I truly, as much as I possibly could, lived out my life in front of them in a way that gave him honor. That's the legacy I want to leave behind.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Tell us something about what you learned from your parents, or you were saying before the show about all the time that you spent.
Yeah, when I moved to Orcas Island in Washington, my parents had been in Juneau for 30 years, and they decided they wanted to move with me. And so I ended up a 14-year journey of caregiving for them. And I think the biggest thing they gave me was their time. I had their total full attention for 14 years. And some of it was hard, but most of it was just amazing. It was such a gift, such a gift.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, it has been my pleasure. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so you heard about mediation today with Toni O'Brien with Restoration Mediation. Will you tell them what your email address is again if they have questions, want to get in touch with you?
So it's Restoration Mediation, www.restorationmediation.com, and it's Toni, Toni, at restorationmediation.com.
That's it for today. We'll talk to you later.
New to San Antonio? If you move from out of state, your estate plan may not be aligned with Texas laws. Did you know 41 states treat property ownership differently than Texas? Protect your assets and loved ones. As a newcomer to Texas, it's essential to review your estate plan with an experienced attorney. Marquardt Law Firm is here to help. Chat with us online at marquardtlawfirm.com to schedule a consultation. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com.